Red Dead Redemption 3 just got a pretty interesting update, but it's not the one that anyone was hoping for. The man who gave us Red Dead Redemption, Dan Houser, finally broke his silence on the future of the series. And let's just say what he had to say has me a bit worried. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you guys know that I've been doing a lot of discussions regarding Red Dead 3, mainly because I just recently played through both of the games and all I've thought about was Red Dead 2 and Red Dead 1. For years, the community has been desperate for any news regarding Red Dead 3, knowing full well that this game isn't even going to be thought of for years after GTA 6 is out. But the community has clung to vague corporate statements and dissecting supposed leaks. But the silence has been broken by one person whose voice I think matters the most. And that is Dan Houser, who was the co-founder of Rockstar Games, but he was also the lead writer who brought to life Arthur Morgan and John Marston. We're also going to talk about whether or not Red Dead Redemption 3 will be a continuation of the story. Will we even get Red Dead Redemption 3? We have a lot to cover, so check the video chapters for easy viewing, and let's dive in. So to understand why this is such a big deal, you kind of have to get who Dan Houser is to this franchise. Dan wasn't just a writer for the franchise, he was the narrative architect for these games. Everything from Red Dead Redemption 2 to Red Dead 1 to GTA games and so on and so forth. His vision is what shaped the world, all of the themes of Red Dead 2's loyalty and betrayal, and the depth of the characters and their arcs that have come to redefine modern gaming time and time again. So when Dan Houser talks, and he doesn't do it often, we kind of just have to listen. Now, on a recent podcast with Lex Friedman, he had a lot to say about Red Dead Redemption 2, Red Dead 3. He talked about GTA and his time at Rockstar Games. Now, during the podcast, Dan Houser was pretty blunt. He does think that Red Dead Redemption 3 will probably happen. Those were his words, just because the series is absolutely massive. But in the podcast, he actually expressed some sadness just at the thought of someone else continuing the Red Dead story. He described Red Dead Redemption and its prequel as a quote cohesive two-game arc. So for him, the Vanderlyn gang's downfall seen through the eyes of John and Arthur is a complete saga with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and a very definitive and quite tragic ending. So yeah, from that statement alone, it's kind of obvious. Yes, Red Dead Redemption 3 is going to happen. Yes, there's going to be horses in it. And yes, it's probably set in the Wild West. You guys can call me a hashtag gaming insider now. But yeah, I think Dan Houser stating that yes, Red Dead 3 is happening and it's going to be by someone else. It's not going to be by him. It's pretty obvious. Like Red Dead Redemption 2 was so successful for Rockstar. It is one of the best single player games ever made. Is it a bit disappointing that, you know, Dan Houser's not going to be involved in that project? Yes. But it would just be incredibly dumb for Rockstar and Take-Two not to continue that series because, again, it's a money printer. Now, in the podcast, he compared the two-game arc of Red Dead Redemption to Grand Theft Auto, where each game has its own self-contained story, which he stated that it makes it easier to release new titles. But with Red Dead Redemption, it's personal for him. He stated, "I think it would probably be in some ways sadder if somebody continued on Red Dead because it was a cohesive two-game arc." Now, that one sentence is kind of at the heart of the issue for fans, even myself. Like, this is coming from the man who wrote the story, telling us that the Red Dead Redemption story is over. So our time with John Marston and Arthur Morgan and the Dutch Vanderlyn gang is indeed just completely done. Now, on the podcast, he also made a note stating that he doesn't own the IP for, you know, Red Dead Redemption. That all belongs to Rockstar Games and the parent company. And he also stated that it was a privilege to work on it, but he doesn't own it. So the future of it isn't his decision. So somebody could go in and continue the story perhaps with a sequel or a prequel without his blessing or without his knowledge in general, which I think is a big no-go for fans. Like, if we get another Red Dead game and it continues on the story in somehow or some way without Dan Houser at the helm, it's just a recipe for disaster. So that's why I think that if they continue the Red Dead Redemption series, it would have to be from a completely different perspective, telling an entirely new story with a new cast of characters, setting, time period, and something that is just not attached to the two games in the series. But at the end of the day, this isn't really Dan Houser's decision anymore. In the podcast, he mentioned that he's both emotionally and professionally moved on from Red Dead 2, GTA, and all of those games. Now, Dan Houser's comments didn't just come out of nowhere either. They land right in the middle of some of the corpo realities and massive development cycles that are seemingly just getting longer. For years, Take-Two Interactive CEO Strauss Zelnick has called Red Dead a permanent franchise, comparing it to, projects and IP like James Bond. And he's on record stating that if a franchise is really great, it's going to keep going. So from a business side of things, that makes total sense. Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the best-selling games of all time. So the Red Dead Redemption series just like straight up dying is not in the cards. Like, it would be really dumb financially for them to not push out another Red Dead game. But this right here is where we start to get into the, bumpy road, have you. You have the business executives who obviously want more Red Dead Redemption, and then you have the original creator who feels like the story's already been told. So if they decide to continue the story, then that right there is where fans will probably push back in a big way. If the suits at Take-Two Interactive push for a sequel, or rather a third game in the series, even if it risks like diluting the legacy of the first two games, then there will be pushback. Fans will not accept that. So they kind of have to tread lightly here. Not to mention there's the sheer cost of this project, to which Dan Houser on the podcast interestingly said that the development of Red Dead Redemption 2 was a quite grueling process. The project took nearly a decade and went way over budget apparently. Right now, Rockstar Games is, obviously focused on GTA 6 and getting that game out of the door, which means that any potential Red Dead Redemption 3 is like years away, probably somewhere in the 2030 range. And it could be even later. Like in 2013, we got GTA 5, and then in 2018, we got Red Dead Redemption 2. So a Red Dead 3 is still so long away that I can't even fathom it. Not to mention you have the original writer of the series, not at Rockstar Games anymore, creates a really bad situation for the future of the series. This brings us to the future. Where does the road for Red Dead Redemption go from here? With Dan Houser stating that the arc is pretty much definitively done, but Take-Two Interactive potentially wanting more, what could Red Dead Redemption 3 even be about? Well, this right here has had my mind racing, and also the community is probably thinking the same thing. Like, what are they going to do for this next game? I would say that there's a few possibilities that we can really look at. The first one is a continuation and just a sequel that stars Jack Marston, which for some, this might feel like the most direct path forward. We left Jack in 1914 after, he avenged his father. So a game set in the 1920s with the Wild West like officially dead could be an interesting take. Like, imagine Jack being like one of the last gunslingers in the age of, prohibition and cars. This would be an interesting concept. However, I think it would be a far cry from what the series is, used to, but it is still possible. Now, the next theory is a golden age prequel. So instead of moving forward with the series, they could jump even further back, where we play as like a young Dutch, or even like Hosea, or another character that we've never heard about. We could see the events of the gang before everything fell apart, and maybe even experience the infamous Blackwater, situation. Now, the appeal for a game like this might be cool. Some people might be down for revisiting the experience with Arthur and Hosea in their prime, but we already know how this story ends. That's the issue with doing another game, is regardless if we go like further back or even in the middle, we already know how the story ends. But if we go forward, then, that's obviously new stuff, but then you're entering in the age of vehicles, so it wouldn't be that classic Wild West experience. But finally, I think the most obvious one, it might be a bit radical, but I think given the circumstances of Dan Houser, stating that the story is officially over, I think the best case scenario is a total reboot, a new crew, another part of the country, and an entirely new time period, all completely disconnected from the Vanderlyn saga. It would be a Red Dead Redemption game focusing on outlaws and redemption, but it would be fully separate from the experience with Arthur Morgan and John Marston. I almost want it to be a completely different universe, if you understand what I'm saying. And the reality is this: Dan Houser is no longer a part of the project, so it might make the most sense to just have something completely new. Just like what they're doing with GTA 6. That is also a game with Dan Houser not writing a single line of dialogue or doing any story or anything. It's completely separate, so we might, get that same thing for Red Dead Redemption 3. I think it makes the most sense to have Red Dead be similar to GTA, where you have the numbered entries like GTA 4, GTA GTA 5 and 6, but every new game is different with a new crew, a new story, a new setting, a new time period, and so on and so forth. It just makes the most sense to me. But that's going to wrap it up with this video, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe to the channel with your notifications turned on so you're not missing out on any future videos like this one. And until next time, this has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.